Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show, where we explore the ideas, systems, and strategies that help businesses grow with less friction and greater freedom. I'm your host, Paul Guyon. Today's guest is Kerri Roberts. Kerri did something that sounds like success. She generated nearly 190,000 in revenue in her first year in business. The problem? She only paid herself about 30,000. Most people would call that a great first year. Kerri didn't. In your first year, Kerri, welcome to the show, first of all. Thank you so much for making the time. That's an interesting first year. I think most people would say, gosh, that's a great success, but it wasn't for you. Tell us in your first year, most people would call that success. What happened? What was going on at that point? Why did you leave where you were?
So, for a little context, I had been in corporate for about 20 years. And when I
Mm.
left, I was a chief operating officer. So, a good year for me was about 500,000 in my corporate career. So, I had base pay, variable comp, executive benefits, all of those good things. And 190 was a solid start for me, but that still didn't reach the mark. And then one of the things that I did in the onset of my business, I launched in April, and by August, I had my first person hired. And I was following the philosophy, which is a really solid philosophy. It's called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. If
Yep,
you haven't
love
heard of
that.
him, yeah, great author. He was my business coach for a while, about six
Oh,
months. And so what I was trying to do was buy back my time. And that wasn't a foreign concept to me because in executive world, you've got personal assistants, housekeepers, you've got your professional assistants at work. So that wasn't a new concept for me, and so I was ready to do that. I hired an admin within the first couple of months, and then she had some scope creep and was getting into marketing, so then I added a marketing person, and these were part-time people, but still paying them. And I was also paying, yeah, I had just left a big company, and so I was purchasing technology that kind of went along with my 20 years experience, and it was just overblown for a small startup consulting firm. But I had never
mm.
worked really for a small firm. The smallest organization I'd worked at had about 50 people, and that was still a $12 million shop. So I had never done this. And so I overdid
Mm.
it at the beginning, and that didn't leave a whole lot for me at the end of the year.
Yeah. So why did you decide to leave that cushy job? It might not have been cushy, but the reward sounded pretty amazing. What was that? What was that conversation?
Yes, working in HR, I would say, and I'm not saying this to get any pity, but it's a pretty thankless job.
Yeah.
And it's what everyone wants done really well, but they want it to run well in the background. And it picks up, it cleans up a lot of the mess. And I like the mess cleaning up, but over time, it feels like you get a good chunk of things done and then you're just spinning your wheels. People don't really want to roll out the new initiatives anymore. And I am not a stereotypical HR person. I'm an operations person that oversees
Yeah.
HR. So I was a COO, but HR is a major part of my lane on top of finance and marketing, sales, and things like that. So what I realized was there were a lot of small to mid-sized businesses that needed this skill set, but couldn't afford a person like me or wouldn't allocate those funds to a person at my level. So what I see small to mid-sized businesses doing are asking their wife to help them with hiring and onboarding and benefits, or somebody, the office manager, to maybe help out and answer employee questions. And it's always done off the corner of someone's desk. And at my last role, I was working in insurance, and I had client managers in the employee benefits space, and they were always getting asked HR questions. So I knew there was a need there. We didn't know where to refer them. Small to mid-sized businesses don't want to be referred to the big firms. They don't want to go to Deloitte or Gallagher. That's not what they want
No.
to do. That's not what they're comfortable with. And then telling them to reach out to their HR payroll system and expect that they know the right questions to ask, it just wasn't a good fit. So we didn't have great referrals. And so when I stepped out on my own, I knew it was a business model that was needed. I didn't know if people would pay for it and what the work exactly would look like. So I could go in a lot of different directions. But when I launched, I just kind of said yes to whatever project anybody wanted me to work on that was relatively in my lane. And then over time, of course, that's shifted drastically.
Yeah. And you went basically from 500K a year to zero at the start. You probably had a runway of some sort that planned. How did the conversation with you and the business you left, how did that go? Was it just I'm leaving in 2 weeks, or was it 6 months, or did they say, oh, see you later, you're starting your own business? How did that work?
So I was K1, so it was messy. I was a shareholder. And so just frankly, it was more like a divorce and it was tough. Attorneys get involved. And I was the first person who had ever left that organization that was a shareholder. And I think they took that very personally, even though
Mhm.
I'm only 43. And so I'm young. To expect a professional to be somewhere forever, I think is an interesting from as an HR pro, I don't expect people to be anywhere for longer than 5 years, but they had all been
Mhm.
there for a really long time. And when they brought me
Yeah.
on as a shareholder, I think they just assumed I would be like they would and not leave. And it was a little bit of a mess. Took a while to untangle, I would say.
They were probably a little bit older than you and had been the baby boomers probably, who would find a company and work their entire career there. So there, yeah, today's employees and professionals are different. And so,
Yep.
yeah.
They were all older than me and all male. And I think
Mhm.
I just, unfortunately, I probably affirmed some of their fears from the very beginning about bringing on a younger female, but I also think I forced them to modernize in some ways as well. And I
Mhm.
know I force them to modernize in a million different ways, but when it comes to if they bring on other shareholders in the future, I think they'll look at that differently and they should.
Yeah. Yeah. So at home, did that have a big effect on things at home? Was your partner, was he supportive of it? Was he concerned about it? How did that conversation go?
Yeah, so he actually, my husband has always recommended that I start my own business. And
Oh.
it's not something that I really wanted to do. My dad's an entrepreneur, and I had this perception that it was easier to work in someone else's business than it was to own your own because my
Yeah.
dad worked a lot, worked from home before working from home was cool. And I just had this perception that if you own your own business, you can't find balance. You're pretty much always working. And so I always wanted to work in someone else's business. And I worked 5 years in distribution. Then I went and worked 5 years in finance. Then I worked 2 years in higher education. Then I spent 6 years in insurance and then another 2 years in insurance. And he was like, hey, you keep doing that because you like to build.
Uh-huh.
There's a reason here why you're doing that. And I'm also a very disruptive person. So if someone, usually people will bring me on because they have a mess to clean up. They want something specific. That's my professional reputation. Come in and help them scale, come in and help them sell, come in and clean up a cultural issue. And so once I do that, and then I lay this foundation, I'm pretty rigid. I get in and build out all the things, implement new technology. I push really hard. And then I get a little itchy. I like to go and do. And he saw that in me way before I ever did. That
Mhm.
said, it's still tough. I wasn't the breadwinner. He's successful as well, but I brought a lot to the table. And so that was a transition, but not ironically, about a year after I did that, he said, yeah, I'm going to quit my corporate role and I'm going to start my own business too. And I was like,
Oh.
you've lost your mind. I paid myself $30,000 last year. That's not what we're used to living off of. But
Uh-huh.
he saw what I was building and the freedom I was giving myself and the satisfaction there was in actually working on what you wanted to work on. And he made the switch too. So we've put ourselves on a little bit of a roller coaster the last 3 years, but it is paying off.
Good. So now you've cut your ties with the company you were working with, and you start out at some. So you it took a while to get your first customer. What was that like? Was that scary? Was it methodical? You sound like you had a good plan going in. How did that
Yes.
work?
So when I sold my shares, I had a company reach out to me about 6 months later and ask me to come on board and help build out their operations. And so I did that. And after about 6 months, I said, okay, I want to do this less for you. And I want to start taking on other clients. And so I was working project based with them. And so then we went to an hourly focus and I
Ah.
pivoted them to an hourly rate, which I probably wouldn't do all over again. But I
Hmm.
was pitching it to them and I felt like that was something that they would bite on. And I wanted them to sign off that I could work with other companies in the same industry. I was trying to make it as appealing as possible, which is a theme throughout the last 3.5 years, starting out trying to get somebody to say yes and then learning I should focus on what it is that I want to bring to the table. I think that's a common entrepreneur struggle, but I went to hourly with them instead of working by the project and started bringing on other clients. So for about 6 months, I was exclusively partnering with them, which was it was a large organization that purchased insurance firms. So I had good experience. And then once I was ready to wrap that up, I don't take for granted how well this went. I got on social media and I said, I'm going to be taking on clients. It was April of 23. I'm going to be taking on clients. I'm going to be working on HR projects. This is going to be perfect for the business that has never really focused on their HR, somewhere between 25 and 300 employees. And so if you're interested, reach out. And my book's filled up until December.
Wow. Okay. So now you got clients, you've got what you wish for, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's year end. When did you realize that the economics weren't working?
So throughout that whole first year, I kept thinking, this is how it works. I didn't take funding from anyone. So I'm funding the business myself. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't take out a loan or anything. And so I thought, this is how it works. From April to August, I only bought an email platform and modest technology. And then I brought on this admin, had to invest in her, got a social media scheduling tech, added a few more things, added QuickBooks because I was doing my finances in Excel, just started adding these pieces, then added the marketing person. And I really didn't see it going poorly because I was anticipating not making much the first year. It really wasn't until I looked at the year end numbers and saw, 190,000 top line revenue. That I'm proud of that. But I'm certainly not satisfied because I didn't really hardly make any money. I hadn't paid myself hardly anything. I paid myself $30,000 at the end of the year. I was nervous to pay myself anything because I didn't know if every month was going to be consistent. I wasn't on retainer base yet. I was doing these one-off projects, some hourly work. I didn't have people in contracts like I do now. And so every month I was afraid to take any money for myself. And at the end of the year, I took that little chunk, but that was all I really felt like I could take. And I realized this isn't a sustainable model. If I'm going to operate, I'm not going to work for free.
And what was your reaction? And what was the reaction at home by that point?
Yeah, my husband definitely said, how long are you going to work for free? Not that he was
Oh,
mad,
wow.
but he was like, what is your plan? We've both been corporate executives in the past. We always had goals. And he was like, what's the goal? How long do you think you can run like this before you'll be set? He's like, look at the hours that you spent. Do you feel proud of your hourly rate at $30,000 a year? And of course,
Oh,
I had thought about
ouch.
that as well. But I was like, I'm building the business. All my research shows that it's going to take at least 3 years to really get this thing to where I'd like for it to be. So it's going to take some time, but it definitely was that earworm. Somebody else, one, this impacts my family. Two, someone else has articulated it now. And three, I wasn't satisfied with it either. So that first year, I looked at it as a growing pain, but year two, I went into it differently.
Yeah. Gosh, that must have hurt. I know my spouse, she asked me those same kind of questions. What's your plan? And I live planning. I mean, I do, and you did too.
Yep.
And you go, gosh, do I have a plan? Yeah, of course I am, but can I articulate it? Oh, is it a good plan? So when did you realize that your plan wasn't working? The model that you'd mentioned model a couple of times. What happened next?
To be candid, I kept doing what I was already doing, thinking
Mm,
if I add enough business, then sales cures all ails, right? I had heard my sales
right.
team say that over and over again in insurance. And so I thought, I just haven't added enough clients yet. So I added a contractor to the team to do human resources as well. So I've got this part-time admin, I've got a part-time marketing person, then I add an HR contractor. And I think I'm going to be able to advertise more. Now we've got 2 people. Maybe people are afraid to come to me because I'm a one-person show. So I'm going to promote this other person and I will send her business. And then I'm going to take a good size cut since I'm the one sending the business and we'll really scale. And I would say that that wasn't it either. Running the model the way I was running it, which was essentially if a client came to me, I heard out their issues and then I worked to deliver to support their issues. For example, that we don't really have a handbook. Okay, we'll build one. We have a handbook. It's old. We need it revamped. We will revamp your handbook. We don't have good board governance. Okay, we will build you out a board governance plan and we'll train you on it. That's what I was doing for the first couple of
Hmm.
years. And eventually I got to the point where I realized, number one, I was sending this person business and I wasn't really getting a return. I could have handled all the business if I was running it more efficiently. And so after about a year, we parted ways. And she was a 1099 contractor. But I realized when a company came to me, a small to mid-sized business, and they would say what their issue is, we need performance reviews, and I would build those. They actually, and this is no disrespect to an organization, but they didn't know what they needed. Most organizations don't
Yeah.
really know what good human resources foundations look like. They just know they're having
Hmm.
an issue and they want somebody to help them with it. And so I pivoted my model to start out with an HR audit. And in that HR audit, I ask a number of deep dive questions. And from that, I do a gap analysis and then I meet with their leadership team and outline what it is that I see based on their industry and the organization of their size, what their risks are from an insurance, a cultural, financial, a legal perspective, where I would prioritize the work over the next 90 days to 6 months, and then what I recommend they do internally and what I could do externally for them. So it's kind of the front door to the business. And I'm able to deliver so much better of a work product on a more sustainable basis because I really understand the depth of what they're missing. I can't really write a good handbook if I don't understand how they're operating in practice. And so it made the work easier for me to accomplish once that audit was done. And then I shifted over to project-based work.
Yeah. So let's let's go back to the to where you were. You like you said, companies really don't know what they need HR wise, which is totally true for a small business. But what you were doing, and many entrepreneurs, not even just people who are in HR, many entrepreneurs will take whatever the client says they want and they will go and do it for them. And then that dries up and then they need more work. They don't step back and say, okay, there's more to this than what they're asking me to do. But you're grateful that you have something to do. And so that can be a trap. Did you feel like you were trapped in that space? Did that occur to you? Because you just said, oh, we built a handbook. We said we need this, we need board governance. You built that. Did you feel like you were being, what do they say? Wagging the dog wagging the dog is wagging the tail?
One, everything was customized. So the admin side was taking so much more time than it needed to take. Every contract was custom, every phone call was tailor made, and then every project had differing timelines, price points, because everything was custom. So I felt trapped by the amount of admin and brain power it took just to get it set up and then to deliver on it. That made me feel like I was working way more under that model than I am now, which is wild because I have far more clients now that I carry at any given time, but much more systematic approach. So one, I felt trapped by the admin piece. And then two, yeah, I felt like it's a trust thing. Would people trust me enough to help tell them what they needed in their business if I didn't just say, what do you need? I'll do that. Will they see the value? And the reality of it is, oh my gosh, they see the value a million times more. It's so much more clear. And now I notice it in people's marketing when people are like, I just want to deliver on what other people need. I'm like, that's so weak. Honestly, it sounds so weak to me now, but at the time, that's exactly what I was doing.
So you weren't, it sounds like you weren't following your own advice. So it's funny when an entrepreneur that goes from corporate and they go into entrepreneurship. And I'm just wondering if you agree with this. Do you forget some of the things that you already learned and now you have to go out and prove yourself? Did you feel maybe you weren't worthy yet? Did you have any of those doubts, any of those feelings that I'm all by myself. I don't have all my corporate stuff anymore. It's just me. I've got to deliver this and I got to prove myself. Can I really do it? Did you have those self-doubts?
Yeah, there's several facets to that, but certainly I found myself thinking, I've got this great professional reputation, specifically in Missouri. As a female executive, I was well known. I'd won a lot of awards, well educated, and all of those things. But as an entrepreneur, I wasn't a well decorated entrepreneur. And so I found myself thinking, you're at the bottom again. You have to show that you're the chosen place to go. People aren't going to
Mhm.
automatically, I'm not a household name. I'm going to have to rebuild my brand. And so from the beginning, yes, that absolutely tainted the way that I approached my work. I felt like I appreciated them being an inaugural client, or like I would be more flexible because they took a shot with me or whatever. And it took me a little bit of time to realize I've been doing this for 20 years. I am, in my opinion, in Missouri, I am the top HR consultant, whether I'm doing it inside of a corporation or I'm doing it for myself. And that's silly. And I need to price appropriately. And the reality of it is, clients want that. They want to come to the person. At least in my line of work, they're coming to me not because I'm discount, but because I have a reputation and they want to work with me. They want to do it right. They're scaling or whatever it is. I'm trying to draw in those type of clients, not people who are looking for an HR discount, because in that case, you're probably not going to get accomplished what you actually need for your business to grow.
And did you underprice, you think, at the start? Did you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I started out, I've done projects for 75 an hour, 150 an hour, 250 an hour. Then I went to 350 an hour, and now I'm well above 450 an hour, which works with what I was earning before and makes a lot of sense, especially since I'm not on their benefits plan and it's a short-term contract, and
Mhm.
the efficiency that I bring to the table and all of the experience that I bring to the table. It makes a ton of sense. But yeah, at the beginning, that first role I did for $75 an hour. They were getting
Wow,
a
and then
steal. Bless my heart.
yeah. Do they is that client still a client?
No, I broke it off with this because I
Y
doubled my price with them. And then I said, hey, I've already doubled my price on you once. You guys should probably hire some. They were large enough where I said, you guys should probably hire someone to do this internally and I'll help you find that person. But I don't think I'm it for you anymore. And that's part of, I have a different perspective on consulting than a lot of other consultants I come across. I am not looking to stay on their books forever. As someone who was a COO before and a stickler on the P&L, I was always looking at every single vendor and contract, making sure we were getting the value out of those contracts. My goal is not to stay on with them forever. I argue this with consultants all the time because I understand it's easier to stay on with them forever, but it's not easier for me. I want to build the foundation. The goal of my business is to build
Right.
the HR foundation, get it humming, knock out any outstanding fires that are there, and then they can run on that chassis. And a lot of times I'll go from, let's say, for example, a $6,000 or $10,000 a month contract down to a $2,500 a month contract. And I steer that. I'll say, hey, I think you're at the place where I can back away a little bit. And we tier step
Mhm.
it down. I'll go from 10,000 to 6,000 to 4,500 to 2,500. And I'm steering that. And peers that I run across, they just think that's insane that I'm offering for them to pay me less. But I also know I want to feel so proud of what I'm bringing to the table. And I have a calculation in my mind on how much time I'm going to allocate to clients focused on their projects. And so I want to bring on new clients. I want new clients to come in. I want to tackle those problems. I want to build their foundation. I love doing that. And so I graduate people all the time. It's a part of my philosophy, but counterintuitive to others. So I'm
That
always,
is counterintuitive, but it's also serving the common good, I think. I think serve
yes,
first is a principle that I subscribe to because that's just the right thing to do. But yeah, usually the ladder goes up instead of down. So that is
yes,
counterintuitive. But guess what? You know what? Your father was right. You love to build. You're a builder. And
yep,
so structuring your business that way is suits your life in your personality, which is that's counterintuitive too for an entrepreneur who's going from corporate and making that switch. It just doesn't seem to make sense. But building your business around the way you want to live is not something you can do at corporate usually. But
right.
as an entrepreneur, you certainly can. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
it builds trust with my clients out the gate when I tell them, I'm I'll sign a 6-month contract with you and then we're going to reevaluate. And if they even cough at that, I'll say, let's start with 3 months because I've never had anybody just stay with me for 3 months. They always transition to 6 months, but at 6 months, I am giving it a hard look. I'm looking at what you said you needed, what the gap analysis said it needed. what I've delivered and what we actually have outstanding. I don't try to stretch it out.
Yeah.
I just feel better about that, and it's more fulfilling work for me.
So you were assuming that still we're still in this area. You were assuming that the we're talking success story here. Why did you think that was a good move to go that way when you could have gone the other direction, which was to expand your pricing and increase it?
A success story to me is doing what's right and doing what's right by the client. And so that
Hmm.
is very successful. Understanding what truly is correct for, I've niched down to the type of client I'm looking for. And then I know how I work best. And so understanding that client type and then my personal prototype and paring down my offerings for those two things to match, that has been a huge success for me. And I went from 190 in year one to 240 in year two to 340 in year three. And I'm on track to beat that this year. So it is successful. And I've also might be jumping ahead on your, I don't know what questions are coming next, but I went from having the part-time admin and the HR contractor and the part-time marketing person to I have no employees at all now. I have a contracted company that helps with my podcast. I've got a contracted company that helps with my author journey. And I've got a contracted company that helps with my financials, a fractional controller. Otherwise, I have no one working with me. I've automated everything else inside of AI between Claude and ChatGPT, and then AI that comes inside of my email marketing and things like that. So I've automated everything and streamlined my contracts to where they're cleaner, more sustainable, more repeatable. And I'm able to, I pay myself $15,000 a month now, which is a little bit better, if you recall, than what I was doing in the first year.
It
I've
is
slimmed
a
down my
little bit.
expenses. I've got a 52% profit margin, which I recognize is very high, but I've automated as much as I possibly can. I'm outsourcing what I can, and business is good.
Wow, that's great. Uh, the that is fabulous.
Thank you.
What are some of the mistakes that you made along the way while you were building this redesign? You basically you started out you had the wrong model. You had a bunch of employees or contractors, and that must have been draining for you. What were some of the mistakes that you made as you were redesigning and rebuilding? You did a lot of that stuff that you just mentioned. How did you get there? Because that's what I'm interested in, and that's what I think our audience wants to know is, okay, gosh, how did she do that? And what were some of the mistakes you made along the way that maybe people can avoid?
Yeah, I certainly made some of those. One of the best exercises that I did was just do the Pareto principle on my business. Where is
Hmm.
80% of my revenue coming from? And I took a look at all of my top revenue generating activities and then everything that I was doing or admin or marketing were doing outside of those. And the vast majority of our time was spent on nonsense. I'm not saying those people weren't valuable, but they weren't working on anything that had a true ROI to the business. They were maybe trying to expand my following or give that
Hmm.
extra client service touch or create a membership platform that wasn't going anywhere. It was just like project all over the place. And with everything being custom, there was a lot of time that went into that as well. And so I sat down with those two employees and essentially said, what I've got you working on is not the highest and best use. And so I want to go in a different direction. And I laid out, here's what it would look like, but it's going to be a pivot. And candidly, they both quit and without notice.
Oh,
So
wow.
I think they heard me say that they weren't valuable to the business, and that wasn't true. But what they were
Mm.
working on was not revenue generating, and I was having to reevaluate that. I'm just a one woman show, and they didn't like the new direction that I was going because I was pushing for automation AI. I was going to be closing down one of my membership platforms that one of them really liked and enjoyed, but it was not bringing in any money. So there was
Hmm.
just things that had to go. And when I cast the new vision, they weren't on board. And that was fine. Ended a little more abruptly than I would have hoped, but it forced me to figure it out.
Yeah. Did that cause any issues with your clients or anything like that? Did they notice at all?
The logical thing would be to say, yeah, it was very disruptive and I had to communicate and all of this
Hmm.
stuff. And the answer was no. They didn't even
Yeah.
notice. The email started coming from me instead of an admin, and they liked that. You know what I mean? They wanted to hear
Yeah.
from me anyway. I was the only person that they wanted to talk to. And not because I'm the only person who can do admin, but I shifted so much of it to automation. I heard a story one time where someone was talking about valet drivers and how valet drivers can turn your heated seats on and they can turn on your climate control and they could put a bottle of water in your car. But if they get your car to you in 30 minutes, you're going to be annoyed. But if they don't turn your temperature on and don't bring the bottled water, but they get you that car lightning fast, that's what you wanted. You just wanted your car. And that's
Yeah.
what I realized. They wanted me to focus on their HR foundation. Any of the extra fluff, the monogrammed water bottles, the team retreats that I was doing to make sure we were all aligned and bringing the service at the highest level, my clients just wanted their car. And when I removed all of the social media posts that my marketing person was doing and our flashy website production, all of this stuff, nothing changed. What happened was my expenses went down. And I
Hmm.
actually, the very next month, had my biggest top line and bottom line revenue month that I had ever had. And it was very eye opening, a little frustrating because I felt, wow, for the last year and a half, I've been going down a completely different path. And had this not occurred, I probably would have stayed on that path a lot longer.
And what was your reaction to that?
But at first, it was a little panicky because I was a year and a half in, I had delegated a lot. And just candidly, and this might make me sound a certain type of way, but I was like, I don't want to do my own billing. I don't want to do my own invoicing. That's not why I got into this. I needed help doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But I sat with those thoughts for a couple of weeks. Okay, I'm not going to hire someone. Let me think about this. Either I can go to Upwork or something like that and find one person part time if it comes to that, or I need to think about what I'm really doing. Do I need to show up on my personal social media and my company social media every single day? No. Where am I
No.
actually getting my clients? Where should I actually be showing up? What's driving the revenue? What are the things I can drop off right now that won't damage my client service delivery? And I just started slashing and looking at everything I was doing, going through all of our standard operating procedures, and just realized I can trim this down and make this actually a fun business for me again.
Did you end up doing your own billing?
Yeah, I've got it
Yeah.
automated. When someone sets a contract up with me, I set up it's at least 6 months. So I set up reoccurring payments for my
Right.
HR audit. It's a standard one-time fee. I've got all of that built out in QuickBooks now by category. And so it's very streamlined. I just have a calendar invite that's 30 minutes once a month that says review invoicing. It's just
Huh.
not what I had somebody spending 10 hours a week on that kind of stuff. And it's just, that's not important. Getting paid is important, but
Yeah. Obviously.
overdoing it is not important.
Yeah. That's interesting. I call that MVP, minimum viable product.
Yeah.
It's a project management term, but I have a software development background and I like to get things up and running fast and see what's needed and what isn't. And before I build anything, I want to know what I'm building. And a lot of times you don't have that luxury. You come into a mess like you did,
Yeah.
and you have to step back and take a look at what the landscape is before you do anything, so that you first of all you don't want to remove anything that's working well, that's for that's holding up the company, that's producing ROI, but then you want to make sure that what's left is really what's needed. And a lot of times entrepreneurs make the mistake of building first and then a year and a half down the road going, oh, I guess I should have done this instead. But that's part of the journey, I think. And that can be that can be fun too. That can be just the whole journey is, I think, getting to the point is just one of the parts of the success that we're all looking for, that we're all reaching for. But it's the journey, I think, that is the important one, and having a little fun along the way. Have you been having fun along the way while you've gone through this journey?
I would say yes. I love to learn and I love to build. So this has been a fun process. At the time we're recording this, it is July of 2026. I would say starting October 2025, I started having a lot more fun. because I started watching a lot more money go into my bank account. And I'm not saying that's a direct correlation, like I have to make a lot of money to be happy, but I feel like my time is valued more appropriately now. And so when I am focused on the business, I feel like I am getting paid what I'm worth and able to deliver to my clients what they really need and nothing more, nothing outside of that. From the very beginning, I wanted to do 20 years in corporate means a lot of times, what Christmas gifts are we giving our clients, or like all of these other things that come along with it all.
Hmm.
And I was building all of that out before the foundation and the financial foundation was there. Now I know at the end of this year, I'm going to have money that I can bless some folks with if I want to, whether it's
Yeah.
giving back to one of the nonprofits who's been a client of mine, or maybe it is fun Christmas gifts for clients who were with me during the calendar year, or whatever it looks like. But it's more of reflecting back and then being appropriate instead of trying to overdo it from the very beginning and then not making ends meet.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes we get caught up in that gift giving and things like that aren't really meaningful. And it can be counterproductive and maybe disingenuous even. So we're at fun right now. You mentioned some fun things that you were doing, that you started out doing along the way, I think before you made this big jump. Tell us what else you're doing when you're not working on the business or in the business. What's beyond that? What drives you? What makes you happy?
Yeah, so over the last few years, have written 3 books. The first one
Hmm.
is published, and it's called The HR Easy Button, and it's the practical guide to building an HR foundation. The next 2 books are also going to be in the HR Easy Button series, but the second book is going to focus on the operational side of HR. The third book focused on the strategic side of HR. So they're building blocks on one another.
Uh-huh.
And that second book is in editing right now, which is exciting. So it should be published later this year. And then book 3 should come out next year. And I'm also writing a fun book about this whole transition of my life between corporate and living in the city and then moving to 140-acre farm in the middle of rural Missouri and starting my own business, and my husband becoming an entrepreneur as well. So I'm writing, that's my fun book, my passion project. But we live on this farm and we've got 2 Labradors who are out here. I've got a teenage son still at home. We've got a pool and we've got a gym out here. We've dug a lake, and I'm a outdoorsy girl. I really love to hike in our woods, and I spend a ton of time outdoors. I love to read. I read probably 1 to 2 books every single week, and I've gotten back into
Wow.
fiction reading, which is really fun because
Huh.
I had put down fiction for a really long time and was reading constant business books. And so I'm back into novels and fiction books, which is fun. And I love to bake with sourdough. I've got a sourdough starter and actually just made a
Yeah.
loaf of zucchini bread this morning.
I love the farm. And tell us about the farmers in the area. Are you farming? Do you have a vegetable garden? Do you have animals?
So
Tell us about that.
we have a good sized vegetable garden, which is where the zucchini came from.
Yeah.
So I've got a pumpkin patch and several different things. We've built a chicken coop. We haven't added girls to it yet, but we're planning to. Once our son gets back into school this year, we'll probably add some chickens to our chicken coop. But around this area, we're surrounded by lots of cattle, so a lot of livestock. My father is a row cropper, and so lots of milo, fescue, corn, beans, wheat, all of that surrounds us.
Are you farming?
Other than our vegetable garden and then adding chickens, no, we do what's called CRP. It's a crop reduction rotation program through the government where it's focused on conservation of the land. And so it's the opposite of farming. You don't farm the land, even though you still till it, you still plant certain pollinators and things like that. But it's to help with conservation efforts and to help with soil health. And so we do that on the majority of our tillable area.
Yeah. So are you the one driving the tractor doing that? Your husband
I
doing that?
certainly know how to do that, and I
Hmm.
will raise and lower the bucket when my husband needs me to, but he loves being out there.
Oh
He is
yeah.
a mortgage broker, so he's a business guy too, and so he loves being outside and doing that. I'm more of focused in the garden, and I'm the pool girl and things like that, but
Uh-huh.
he's the tractor guy.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of fun. So, Kerri, it's been a pleasure having you on today. How can people get in touch with you? And I think they should probably pick up your HR Easy Button book. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So if you go to Amazon, you can just type in HR Easy Button Book and that'll pop up. Of course, we've got it in audio, paperback, and hardback. And then if you want to talk HR consulting, saltandlightadvisors.com. And if you want to talk speaking or speaking gigs or personally with me, KerriMRoberts.com. Those are the best ways to get in touch. And then I'm also very active on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and you also have a podcast. It's called "Don't Waste the Chaos."
That's right.
Looked a little bit at that this morning,
Yes,
and
don't waste the chaos. I've got a YouTube channel. I'd love it if you follow along. And then also for your listeners, if they're listening and they're thinking about their HR, I do have a free mini HR audit. If they go to
Mhm.
saltandlightadvisors.com/HR audit, it takes about 10 minutes and it helps you understand if you're in a risky spot or if you need some attention or if you're doing well with your HR foundation.
Right. Kerri, I think what struck me most here today was the business wasn't failing. It was just wasn't succeeding in a way, or it was succeeding in a way that wasn't sustainable. And you were able to turn that around. I think a lot of founders who are quietly living that exact situation. And so taking a step back like you did and cutting what's not working can be hard to do. Maybe you've got a podcast that's not producing revenue. Don't do it anymore unless you really totally love it and you have time, but maybe you shouldn't be doing it. So thank you so much. I love the farming that you're doing and the work that you're doing. It sounds amazing. And I wish you the best.
Thank you. And I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, you bet. It's been a pleasure. So remember, faith and action go hand in hand. So keep the pedal to the metal. Until next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show, I'm Paul Guyan and Kerri Roberts. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lead Machine Growth Show with Paul Guyan, where we show you how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream so that you can transform your vision into reality. Remember to visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show.